So this is the topic of being lonely. It's not an easy topic, I have to say, but it's a good topic to talk about. Lonely but not lost. I've put the name of my temple here. It should actually be Dhammakaya Europe. So if you are, as you are aware, there is an increasing tendency of loneliness and social isolation going out throughout the world. This has been reported since 2010 in many countries by many doctors and experts. And maybe you know some people in your environment, in your surroundings, who are also lonely. I know a few people who come here regularly who are struggling with loneliness, especially an older woman that I'm familiar with, and also other people in the area, in the neighborhood. And the causes are, according to researchers, causes are individualism and use of technology. Because of modern technology, sometimes it creates more distance, and it's sometimes hard to keep up for people in less, who are older, and also people who are a little bit more poor or not as affluent as the rest of society. Sometimes difficult to keep up, and this is why sometimes it causes isolation. I already talked about the World Health Organization calling loneliness a global public health concern. But not only the World Health Organization has talked about this. In fact, even last year, Vivek Murthy, who is an Indian surgeon, an American surgeon from Indian origin, Surgeon General, which is kind of like the chief doctor of the USA, and he stated that loneliness is just as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. This actually made it into the news quite a lot. And the funny thing is that the word Vivek actually refers to solitude. That's the translation of his name. But the point is that what he was trying to make is that loneliness is something we really need to do something about, whether it's a tendency, a statistic, or whether it's something you have experienced in your own life, whether there are people around you who are struggling with loneliness. Maybe you have parents, or maybe you have siblings who are struggling with loneliness. This can also be a case. So what is loneliness? Loneliness is an unpleasant emotional response to perceived isolation, according to the researchers. But I think it's important to note that there is a difference between feeling alone and being alone. Because sometimes we have many people around us, but they don't really understand us. They don't know what we're going through. And then it can sometimes feel like we have to deal with things alone. This is not only a problem for those who are isolated socially, but it can also be a problem for people who are in positions that are kind of unique or that are different, could be like that. So there's many ways that we can be lonely. In fact, the researchers in the Netherlands, they actually said that loneliness is just the difference between what you feel should be the preferred amount of social contact and what you actually had. But it's also about connecting with other people in a way that is fulfilling. The Buddha himself, he talked about friendship quite a lot in the Buddhist texts, and especially when it comes to spiritual friendship. But there's one sutta or one teaching in which he talks about 3 kinds of friends that are important to have in our lives. And it's important to distinguish these. There may be people who are morally and spiritually less far as us. Now to make it clear from the start, we might not feel that this is a way that we look at the world. We don't maybe not like to compare ourselves with others in this way, but it's just a useful way to distinguish this, because the Buddha, he would always say that it's very important to have people in our lives who are spiritually further than ourselves. These are most important to have in our lives. But sometimes we know when people are in our lives who are struggling, who are maybe struggling with their lives, struggling to find happiness in lives. Sometimes, of course, you can have such friends as these are like the friends that we are compassionate to, that we have sympathy for. But the point that the Buddha is trying to make is, don't let yourself be dredged through a lower level by anybody else. So it's important to let us be inspired by other friends, by people who are helping us to grow further. There are also many people who are maybe similar to us spiritually and morally speaking. And then it's good for us to inspire each other in conversation, to allow things to run smoothly and to be at ease. To have a climate, to have a community is very important. There were some monks in the time of the Buddha who wanted to live alone, who wanted to live in solitude. And the Buddha, he refused that. He said in some cases, not every case, but in some cases he would refuse that. He would say, in your case, it's better if you live in a community of many monks, so that these people can inspire you and help you on the spiritual path. So this is an important thing to notice, that spirituality it's always important to have many people on your path that can inspire you. And that the people who are less further than you, that are struggling on the path, or maybe do not feel more spiritually inspired, maybe are not that much interested in spirituality, meditation, or leading a moral life, that those people, we can still help them, but we shouldn't get dragged down by these people, like causing us to fall downwards. So the Buddha, he would often say that it's important to associate with wise, and that is that we are not letting other people drag us downwards. So Kunyai, the nun who founded our temple in Thailand, she would often say that when we are helping other people, we have to know ourselves and know the other. She wasn't quoting Sun Tzu or something like that, but she was trying to point out that it's important to not forget yourself when you're helping other people. To know yourself means that to know your past and your future. What did she mean by that? She meant to say that when we are helping our other people, we have to look at what we're capable. This is what she meant when she said the past. And what we can do in the future is similar, what we are capable of in the future. And then we look at the past and the future of the other person. Is that a person that we can help? Does that person have the capacity to grow further? We have to take these things into account. But the most important thing is that we distinguish between friends that are not really good friends, because they will cause us loneliness for sure. The false friends, the Buddha said, there are 4 false friends that we should avoid in our lives. There's the old take, a person who only asks us for things but never gives anything and makes false promises. The great talker, very similar, but this is like a person who is often lying. Some people, they sometimes lie, and it becomes a sort of habit that is even difficult for them to distinguish between truth and lie. I know one man who was married to somebody like that, and I've noticed that there was something going on, which is kind of weird. This woman, she would come up with stories that are just not true, like she had cancer or something like that. But yeah, this sometimes happens. People, they have these stories and they use that to their advantage. So these people we should avoid. But there are some people who use flattery. They use lies, but in a positive, in a so-called positive way. They try to always encourage us, but it's kind of not really working. For example, you might think that you're better off divorcing your husband, something like that. And then they say, yeah, you should better off, you would better be alone, or something like that. But when you're alone, you suddenly realize that you've made a terrible choice. He was actually quite good to you, and then you actually want to go back. And then you ask your friend again, and then he says, yeah, you should go back to him. They just always agree with everything you say. This is not helpful. Some people, they don't have a real clear idea of what is right and wrong. And then sometimes these cannot be good friends in our lives. Then the fellow spendthrift, the Buddha, he added that one at the end just to make sure that we don't associate with anybody who's dragging us down when it comes to taking care of your finances, or when it comes to spending your lives in a good way. So what are true friends then? There's many true friends out there. The Buddha said the true friend is a helper. And that is a person who would even give his life for you. The friend who is the same in happy and unhappy times. So when you are in need, then you look for a friend that is a friend indeed, right? Like the saying goes. And the friend who points out what is good for you, not only just a person who can smile and give you encouragement, but also people who know what is right and wrong, what is good to do, how to take responsibility in your family life, in your work life. And then the friend who is sympathetic. What does that mean? This is the sort of friend that will defend you when somebody criticizes you and it's not really good, that person's criticism is not coming from a good place. Or when somebody is giving you praise and it's well deserved, then your friend will also agree with that. He will be there when people attack you in a way that is not right. That person has your back, as the idiom goes. So this is important in our lives, because when we have good friends, then we can overcome loneliness. But if we have false friends, even if we have many people around us, but they are not really our friends, then we will still be lonely. The entire spiritual life is about friendship. The Buddha, he said, when his assistant and his attendant, the Venerable Ananda, he approached him and said, is it true that it's half of the spiritual life to have good friendship and good companionship and good comradeship? But the Buddha said, no, it's not. It is the entire spiritual life to have good friends, good companions, and good comradeship. So it's important to have this in your life, to have good spiritual friends. Now, what defines a good spiritual friend? We talked about true friends, but what really defines a good spiritual friend? You can see that the Buddha here is being a very good spiritual friend for his attendant, the Venerable Ananda. It's a very old relief, and I thought I just added into this presentation. So the Buddha, he said, if somebody comes to you, a friend of you, and they have good intentions, and they point out some mistake that you made, in order for you to be able to correct it, that is true friendship. Because that's not an easy thing to do. When we grow older, when we grow more experienced, then it will be even less that people come to us and give us feedback. So when you have somebody like that in your life, you should regard him as somebody who points out treasure. That's what the Buddha said in the Dhammapada. The wise one who is seeing your faults rebukes you. Or maybe if you don't want to call it rebuke, maybe you can at least say, yeah, a person who gives you some feedback now and then, helping you to see something, being a mirror to you. because it's not always easy to see your own mistakes. It's like a fish, like the Buddha said himself. It's like a fish swimming in the water who does not know what water is. Sometimes we do not know our own habits. So it's good to have such a spiritual friend. And when we are a little older, or when we are getting just a little bit more further in life, we should look around often and ask ourselves, how many of those people are there still around us who can come up to us and tell us, you're wrong? And it may also be encouragement, of course. It doesn't always have to mean you're wrong. But those people who can tell us we're wrong, those are very valuable in life. And that also means that this is a friendship that is very strong, because you are able to disagree. And that's not always possible within every kinds of friendship. But let us remember that not being lonely is not only about having friends outside of ourselves, but also being a good friend to ourselves, loving yourself in a wise way. The Buddha said to King Pasenadi, one of the kings in ancient India, he said to him, having traversed all quarters with the mind, so when you look at the entire world, one finds none anywhere dearer than oneself. Everybody loves themselves by nature. Likewise, each person holds himself most dear. Everybody else is also like that. Everybody cares for themselves in some way. So when you know that, when you love yourself, you should also not harm others. This is what the Buddha said. To understand yourself, it can help you to also extend your sympathy and empathy with other people. Getting to know yourself through meditation, through spiritual practice, through self-awareness, can make you understand what the other person is going through. Previously, you might have been somebody who is easy to judge other people. But then when you meditate, whoa, it's not easy to still that mind of ours. It takes a bit of effort to really, or maybe a bit of patience. Maybe that's to put it better. It takes a bit of patience to really get to that moment of stillness and inner quiet. So when we look at other people, we understand what they're struggling with, because we have also seen that struggle in ourselves. To get to know yourself, to get to love yourself, to understand your own love for yourself, your care for yourself, it can help you to understand other people as well. So it's important, not only in order to overcome loneliness, but also in order to be a better human being, that we learn to love ourselves in the right way. So whenever we practice loving kindness meditation, we start with this self-knowledge. I want to, like at the end of this meditation just now, I just gave a little bit of loving kindness meditation. I mean, it's a short meditation. We have only about half an hour for the meditation, but I just ended with a short moment when we share this peace with everybody in the world. And you can always do that in your daily lives when you meditate. Just take a moment to share this peace with everybody in the world. Because as the Buddhist texts say, just like I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, just like I want to live and not to die, others want the same. And the Buddha also said the famous, often quoted words, the ultimate wish of every being is happiness. This has often been cited by the Dalai Lama, but it's from the early Buddhist texts. And this is very important because it means that even those people who make terrible mistakes, who cause many people to suffer, they still think somewhere in their mind that that is the way to happiness. So that's something to think about, to ponder about. We all want happiness, but some people want it in the wrong way. So when you understand, I want happiness and other people want happiness, then you understand it's also good to spread loving kindness from yourself outward, to learn to love yourself first and then spread it outwards. To get to love yourself first, it's important to look at yourselves in 4 ways. This is what we call in Buddhism the 4 divine abodes. Like 4 places, you could say, 4 places for your mind to really grow in, to really enrich yourselves with. Loving kindness, being kind often with yourself is very good. If you are often angry with yourself, and we are not sometimes we're not even aware of that, then you will not find much happiness in that way. You will find lonely. You will feel lonely because you need other people's kindness to somehow correct your own anger or your own impatience. So if we are kind and warm to ourselves, we don't need so much other people's kindness. I'm not saying that everybody should live like a monk or live in solitude in the mountain or in the Himalaya or something. But it's good to learn to love yourself so you don't feel you need other people that much. And not only love kindness to ourselves, to practice regularly, to do that regularly, but also compassion. Looking at your own suffering and telling yourself, I want you to be free from that suffering. That is a good thing to say to yourself often. And then when you are happy, any moment that you are happy, you feel fulfilled by the things you've done in your life. You feel happy in the things the stillness you found in your life, the happiness. Then also be happy with yourself. It sounds silly, but it's a thing, you know. Sometimes when we are happy, we don't feel somehow we are not deserving of that happiness. And then when you really look at it, you deserve it. You deserve it. I mean, if it's real, you deserve it, right? But if it's fake happiness from, I don't know, buying something or something, that's not really the happiness that we work for. And then there's equanimity. Sometimes we have to allow ourselves to suffer sometimes. We can't always be afraid of suffering. We have to allow this suffering and happiness to be there. And there will be ups and downs in life. We have to be able to understand that. We can't always be perfect. Life is not Instagram. So I already explained this during the meditation, so I won't be explaining that much more, but it's important that we often practice loving kindness, whether it's in meditation or in our daily lives, to ourselves, and then from ourselves outwards. You can do that when you wake up. When you wake up, you can meditate, spread loving kindness for a moment. You can also do it during brief moments throughout the day. But when you are often doing that already, then you can learn to practice it even when you're doing something. Like when you're driving, you have to be aware of where you're driving and so on. But you can still be kind to yourself. When you're having a shower, or when you're doing some cleaning, or you're doing even some reading or something, you can still practice this feeling of kindness from the center. And it will help you to this kindness you can expand to other people through your words and through your smiles. And that is how you create connection. By first learning to be there for yourself, and then you can easily extend that feeling, that attitude outwards to other people. Finally, I'd like to say a few words because we have been talking about this as though all kinds of solitude and loneliness are wrong. But there is a certain solitude which is good. And that is a very essential part of Buddhism as well. it starts with the idea that sometimes the relationships that we build up with other people can sometimes feel like entanglement. Maybe you've had that feeling sometimes. I just heard that there is a new trend right now. I suppose it's a trend among Gen Z, young people, Gen Z or millennials. Millennials are not really young anymore, right? Well, Gen Z then. That people like to go on an airplane and just leave their phone behind back home and go somewhere and just enjoy the environment. This is a very new trend. It's very good. I think it's very healthy. So sometimes we need to be away from the entanglement. Sometimes some relations are not really helping our spiritual friendship. The Buddha, he compared this with two bracelets on one wrist. And when you move them around, when you move your wrist around, then the bracelets, they bump into each other and damage one another. In the same way, if we have some relations, they can be damaging. So sometimes it's good to take moments for yourself and also take a moment to get out of any conversations that may distract us from the spiritual and the moral life and restrict our inner growth. This is where we come back to Dr. Vivek, Viveka, seclusion. The Buddha, he said that being secluded is just like a rhinoceros. You are a strong animal. Did you know that even tigers, sometimes, very often, tigers cannot win from a rhinoceros? Rhinoceros are very strong animals. And the Buddha, he said, rhinoceros, they don't travel in groups. They travel alone. Well, maybe only the Indian rhinoceros, I don't know. But he said it's like that. You travel alone. You're not entangled too much in other people's lives. And it's good to have these moments in your life. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all the time. But it can be certain moments in your life to increase your contentment and patience with yourself, to focus on being kind to yourself, and to increase the opportunities to meditate. Because the deepest form of seclusion and to really withdraw from society now and then is inside, is a mental state. To really learn to get to let go sometimes. So this is a very good moment. If you ever have the opportunity to join a retreat in English language, if you have not done that yet, I suppose many of you have already. But if you haven't done that for a while anymore, you would like to do it again. It's very good to do that now and then. The Buddha himself, he said, we need to take certain moments in our life. He even used the word to spend time, to actually manage our time, to have some moments to find seclusion in life. This is what he called knowing how to manage time, or in his words, to be the person who knows the right measure of time. So this is something I'd like to end with today. So not all forms of solitude are wrong, but it's good to find spiritual friendship in your life and to build up that spiritual friendship, because it's a very rare and precious thing to find spiritual friends and also to be that for other people in the next step. And that all starts with being kind to yourself first. So this is all I'd like to say today about this